Lesson 3.4, using the quadratic formula. How do you solve quadratic equations using the quadratic formula? So our real-world modeling problem. You have a function h equaling negative 16 t squared plus h sub 0. This equation models the height of a dropped object. So this would only represent if it was already up here and I just dropped it. That's what this equation represents. For an object that is launched or thrown, meaning you had a starting down here, it was launched, thrown, and then went up, it has an increase and decrease, you need to put this extra term right here that would help to do its increase velocity. So recall that h is going to be your height, t is your time in seconds, and h sub 0 is how high it was when it first started. So we have this problem. A juggler is going to toss a ball into the air. He's not dropping, he's tossing. If he's tossing, we need to add this part to our equation. So here is our graph. We know that he is tossing. So somehow it's going to go up and then it's going to go down. So I have h equaling a negative 16t squared plus h sub 0, which is the one we had. But because he's throwing it up and then throwing it back down, we have to add the v sub 0t, the point that it told us to. Now we need to figure out what all of this means. So we need to figure out v sub 0, we need to figure out t, we need to figure out h sub 0, and we need to figure out h. There are 4 variables in this problem. So let's go ahead and read the problem to figure out what these 4 variables are. The ball leaves the juggler's hand 4 feet above the ground, which meant it starts right here at 4 feet. It has an initial velocity of 30 feet per second, so it increases at 30 feet per second. The juggler catches the ball when it falls back to a height of 3 feet, so it lands right here at 3 feet, and that's where he catches it. It wants to know how long was it in the air for. So our v sub 0, it's the initial velocity. The initial velocity was 30 feet per second. It's asking us the time. We don't know the time. H sub 0 is the initial height. It started at 4 feet above the ground. Regular h is supposed to be the height of the object when it's done. So regular h is 3 feet. It's asking us what is the time. So regular h was 3, negative 16, we do not know the t, that's what it's asking us to find. H sub 0 is 4, v sub 0 is 30, times the t that we do not know. So I have 3 equaling a negative 16t squared plus 4 plus 30t. So I want to rearrange this so I have t squared, then t, then 4. So I have a negative 16t squared plus 30t plus 4. Most of my equations make this equal to 0, so we're going to make it equal 0 first, so I know what problem I'm actually starting with. So I need to solve this problem. So let's go through the methods that we know. Can I graph it? I cannot graph it because I don't have graph paper and those numbers are a little big and I don't think I can graph it correctly. So I'm not going to graph it. I cannot do the square roots because it's not just x squared by itself. I also have an x, which means square root is not possible. Can I then do factoring? I do not think this is easily factorable. I actually can't figure out how to factor that, so it's not factorable. I'm not going to solve by factoring. Can I complete the square? A is not 1. Even though, yes, b is even, a is not 1. So I am not going to complete the square. That means my last resort is quadratic formula. I have to use the quadratic formula, which means I am going to end up having to find ABC, and I'm going to use my quadratic formula. So I'm going to fill in all of my numbers. So I have negative 30 plus or minus the square root of 30 to the second power minus 4 times a negative 16 times a 1 is 964. This is all over 2 times a negative 16 is a negative 32. So because this is a real world problem, we're going to convert our answers into decimals. So you have negative 30 plus the square root of 964 all over negative 32. Typing this all into your calculator, you end up getting x to equal negative 0.03276. That was the adding. Now we need the subtracting. X equals negative 30 minus the square root of 964 all over negative 32. Typing this all into your calculator for the decimal gives me 1.9077. So what is my t? My t is either a negative number, which doesn't make sense because you can't have negative time, or my t is 1.9077. So because you can't have negative time, and that means this is not your answer. So my answer is 1.9077 is t. This is how long the ball has been in the air.